I took everything from you. My brother stole my girlfriend. My parents defended him. 10 years later, he mocked me in front of everyone for being alone until he saw my wife and realized his betrayal had finally caught up to him. I'm Matthias. I'm 38 years old, and I never imagined I'd see Camila again after what happened. But there she was at my parents' silver wedding anniversary dinner, her hand intertwined with my brother Diego's, while he gave me that arrogant smile I knew too well. The last time I saw them together was 10 years ago, the day I discovered their family betrayal. I remember every detail of that afternoon that destroyed my world perfectly. I was 28. I had just asked for a promotion at the bank where I worked, and I was planning to propose to Camila. That same week, I had bought the ring, booked the restaurant, rehearsed the words. Everything was perfect until I came home early and found them in my bed. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't make a dramatic scene like in the movies. I just stood in the doorway, watching as my younger brother, Diego, 25 at the time, hurried to cover himself while Camila let out a muffled scream. The family betrayal hurt more than anything I had ever experienced. Diego tried to stammer out an explanation. He said something about not being able to help it, that they had fallen in love, that they didn't want to hurt me, but that true love was stronger than any loyalty. Camila, for her part, had the nerve to tell me I was too predictable, too boring, that Diego made her feel alive. I turned around and walked out of the apartment without a word. I packed my things that same night while they stayed in the living room waiting for me to explode. I never did, I just left. The part that hurt me the most wasn't losing Camila. Over time, I understood that if she had cheated on me with my own brother, she was never the right person for me. What really destroyed me was my family's response when they found out. My mother cried. My father locked himself in his study. But a week later, when Diego announced that he and Camila were officially together, my parents accepted the relationship. Mom told me I should understand that the heart has reasons that reason doesn't understand. Dad just patted me on the shoulder and mumbled something about time healing all wounds. 6 months later, Diego and Camila got married in an intimate ceremony. I wasn't invited. Well, technically I was, but it was more of a formality than a real invitation. My mother called me crying, begging me to attend so the family would look united. I refused. That was the last time I spoke to Diego for almost 10 years. I threw myself into work, got that promotion I had been looking for. Then another and another. At 32, I was the regional manager of the most important bank in the country. I moved to another city, bought a house, built a new life where no one knew anything about my brother or my ex-girlfriend. During those years, my parents tried to keep in touch. They'd come to visit me occasionally, always avoiding mentioning Diego or Camila, as if not talking about them would make the problem disappear. I played my role as a polite son, but the emotional distance was palpable. Mom constantly asked me about my love life. Every visit included the same interrogation. If I was dating someone, if I was thinking of settling down, if I wasn't lonely, I'd answer with vagueness, changing the subject as quickly as possible. The truth is that after what happened with Camila, it was very hard for me to trust someone again. I dated a few women. I had a couple of relationships that lasted a few months, but nothing serious. I had built such high walls around my heart that it seemed impossible for anyone to climb them. Until I met Isabella. It was 5 years ago at an international banking conference in Europe. She was the representative of a major business group, elegant, intelligent, with a contagious laugh and a perspective on the world that fascinated me from the first moment. She was of Italian origin, had grown up between Rome and Buenos Aires, and possessed that perfect combination of European sophistication and Latin American warmth. It wasn't love at first sight. It was something better. It was friendship at first conversation. We talked for hours that first night about business, about travel, about our visions of the future. We exchanged phone numbers without any ulterior motives, just two professionals who had found an interesting intellectual connection. For the next 6 months, we kept in touch. Weekly video calls that started being about work projects and ended up being about our lives, our dreams, our fears. Isabella told me about her divorce years ago, about how she had rebuilt her life from scratch. I told her about Diego and Camila, something I hadn't shared with anyone in years. She didn't pity me. She didn't tell me to forgive. She just listened and then told me something I'll never forget. The best perfect revenge is to build a life so full that the person who betrayed you realizes you were the prize they lost. A year after we met, Isabella accepted a position in the same city where I lived. We started dating officially. There was no rush, no pressure. Just two mature people who had been hurt before and were willing to give each other a real chance. We got married 2 years ago in a private ceremony in Tuscany. Only our closest friends were present. I didn't invite my family. Mom found out on Facebook when Isabella posted a picture of us toasting at the reception. I received angry messages, tearful calls, texts accusing me of being cruel and vengeful. But I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because I wanted that day to be perfect, without burdens from the past, without uncomfortable glances, without having to pretend everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. After the wedding, I maintained minimal contact with my parents. Brief calls on their birthdays, messages on Christmas, nothing more. They never mentioned Isabella directly, as if not talking about her would make her less real, until the invitation to my parents' silver wedding anniversary dinner arrived. I found it in my mailbox 3 months ago. A formal invitation, printed on thick paper with gold lettering. 25 years of marriage they wished to celebrate with the whole family. I was going to automatically refuse, but Isabella stopped me. "I think you should go," she told me one night while we were having dinner. "It's been 10 years, my love. You don't have to forgive them or forget what happened, but maybe it's time to close that chapter properly." I gave her one reasons why it was a bad idea. I warned her about how uncomfortable it would be, about how Diego would surely take the opportunity to rub it in my face, about how my parents would probably continue to act as if nothing had happened. "Then, let them see what they lost," Isabella replied with that smile of hers that always disarmed me. "Let them see the man you became without them. And more importantly, let them see that you found something real, something worthwhile, something they can never take away from you." She was right. She always was, so I accepted the invitation. I confirmed for 2 people and for the next 3 months. As the date approached, I felt a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how I would react to seeing Diego and Camila again after so long. What I didn't know was that that night would become the moment of divine justice I had been waiting for without knowing it. The dinner was scheduled for 8 p.m. at the exclusive Vista Dorada restaurant, the same place where my parents had celebrated their wedding 25 years ago. Isabella and I arrived at exactly 8. She was wearing a midnight blue dress that enhanced her figure with an elegant but not ostentatious cut. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun, with pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother and that serene smile that radiated confidence. I was wearing my best suit, a tie that Isabella had chosen that morning, and a steely determination to keep my composure no matter what happened. The maitre d' led us to the private room my parents had reserved. As we walked down the hall, I heard the familiar laughter coming from inside. My heart began to beat faster. Isabella squeezed my hand gently, a silent gesture of support. We entered the room. The silence was immediate and absolute. My parents were in the center of the room, surrounded by family and friends. My mother, Estella, 55, was wearing a champagne-colored dress of absolute surprise. My father, Roberto, 58, almost choked on his drink when he saw us enter. But the looks that impacted me the most were those of Diego and Camila. My brother was standing next to the main table with a glass of wine in his hand. At 35, Diego had gained some weight. His hair was starting to thin at the crown, and he had that look of self-satisfaction that had always characterized his personality. He was wearing a suit that looked expensive, but was slightly tight on him, as if he had bought it when he was thinner and refused to accept that his body had changed. Camila was by his side in a red dress that was trying to be flashy, but only managed to look desperate. At 36, she was still attractive, but there was something in her eyes that wasn't there 10 years ago, a kind of tiredness, of resignation. Her smile seemed rehearsed, as if she had practiced it in front of the mirror so many times that it had lost all spontaneity. Matthias, my mother, was the first to react, approaching me with her arms outstretched. "You came. I can't believe you really came." I allowed the hug, brief and formal. "Happy anniversary, Mom." My father approached too, patting my shoulder in that masculine and uncomfortable way he had always used to show affection. "Son, it's good to see you." Then his eyes fell on Isabella, and I saw how the surprise transformed into something more. Admiration perhaps, or recognition that the woman by my side was someone completely out of the ordinary. "This is Isabella," I said, placing my hand on the small of her back. "My wife." The murmur that ran through the room was almost audible. Relatives who hadn't seen me in years, uncles, cousins, friends of my parents, all looked at us with a mix of curiosity and amazement. Isabella extended her hand towards my mother with a genuine smile. "Mrs. Estella, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Matthias has told me so much about you." My mother took her hand, but her expression was difficult to decipher. A mix of confusion, surprise, and something that could have been regret. "You, your wife?" she repeated, as if she needed to hear the words again to believe them. "We got married 2 years ago," I explained calmly. "In Italy, without inviting us." Diego's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Without even telling us. How considerate of you, brother." I turned to look at him directly for the first time in 10 years. "Considerate," I repeated in a neutral voice. Like when you slept with my girlfriend in my own bed. The room fell into absolute silence. Some guests looked away, uncomfortable. Others froze, as if they were witnessing a car accident they couldn't look away from. Diego clenched his jaw. "That was 10 years ago, Matthias. It's time to get over it." "I got over it," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "That's why I'm here, happily married. While you're here." The implication hung in the air. Isabella squeezed my hand discreetly, a silent sign not to let Diego get to me. Camila, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Her voice sounded tense, forced. "Matthias, I didn't know you had gotten married. Congratulations." I nodded in her direction without saying anything more. I didn't know her explanations. I didn't know her anything. My mother, desperate to ease the tension, gestured towards the tables. "Well, I'm sure everyone is hungry. Why don't we sit down and enjoy this beautiful evening?" The guests began to move towards their assigned seats. Isabella and I were led to a table near the main one, but not at it. Evidently, my parents hadn't expected us to actually attend, let alone for me to bring someone. As we settled in, I could feel the constant stares from the entire room. I heard the whispers, the speculations. Who was that stunning woman on Matthias's arm? How was it possible that he had gotten married without anyone knowing why he had come after so long? The dinner began with the typical anniversary speeches. Friends of my parents shared anecdotes about their marriage, their children, their achievements as a family. Every mention of the united family produced a bitter taste in my mouth. Diego, who had had several glasses of wine by that time, decided it was his turn to speak. He stood up, slightly wobbly, with that arrogant smile I knew so well. "I want to make a toast," he announced, raising his glass. "To my parents, for 25 years of marriage, of love, of family. And since we're on the subject of family," he raised his glass in my direction. "I also want to toast my brother Matthias, who honors us with his presence after so long." The sarcasm in his voice was unmistakable. 10 years, Diego continued. 10 years without seeing each other, without calls, without visits, without being part of this family. But here he is. He finally decided we were worth it. "Diego, my father tried to intervene, but my brother ignored him. And you see, Matthias, while you were busy being a hermit, the rest of us moved on with our lives. Camila and I have been happily married for 10 years. My parents have been amazing, supporting us in everything. And you, well, you're still single, dedicating your life to work without anyone who really cares about you." He let the words hang in the air, savoring what he thought was his moment of triumph. "It's sad, really," Diego concluded. "But I guess some people just aren't made for true love and family. Some people are destined to be alone." The public humiliation Diego intended to inflict would have worked if his words had been true. But as he spoke, with that smug smile and that drunken arrogance, I simply remained seated, calm, with Isabella by my side. When Diego finally finished his speech and sat down, obviously expecting me to explode or leave the place, I simply took a sip of my water and returned his gaze calmly. "Are you finished?" I said in a soft but clear voice, making sure everyone in the room could hear me. Diego blinked, confused by my lack of reaction. "Are you finished with your little speech about how I'm lonely and sad?" I repeated. "Because there's something you should know before you continue to make a fool of yourself." I stood up, and the entire attention of the room focused on me. Isabella looked at me with a supportive smile, knowing exactly what I was about to do. "First," I said, addressing not just Diego, but the entire room, "I'm not alone. I haven't been for the last 5 years." I turned to Isabella, and extended my hand. She took it and stood up beside me, radiant, elegant, completely self-assured. Everyone, this is Isabella Rossi de Marchetti, my wife. We met 5 years ago at an international conference in Milan. We got married 2 years ago in Tuscany. And before you continue with your assumptions, Diego, let me clarify something. I'm not alone. I've never been since she came into my life. Isabella greeted the room gracefully. Her smile was calm but powerful. The contrast between her and Camila was impossible to ignore. While Camila tried to look elegant in a dress that screamed for attention, Isabella was simply elegant, without effort, without pretense. I saw Diego's expression change from arrogance to confusion. His eyes scanned Isabella from top to bottom, processing what he was seeing. Camila, for her part, had turned pale. Her hand was gripping the wine glass so tightly I feared the glass would break. Second, I continued, looking directly at Diego. While you stayed here, in the same city, working in your father-in-law's used car business, I became the regional manager of Banco Continental. I manage operations in 8 countries. I travel the world regularly, and yes, I work a lot, but not because I'm lonely or sad. I work because I love what I do and because I built a career I'm proud of. The silence in the room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. My parents looked at me with wide eyes, as if they were seeing a stranger instead of their son. They probably were. They didn't really know me. They had never bothered to ask me about my life after I left. And third, I said, my voice taking on a colder tone, while you celebrate having built your life on the rubble of family betrayal, I built mine on real values, loyalty, honesty, respect, things that evidently don't mean much to you. I sat down again, Isabella by my side, her hand finding mine under the table. The message had been delivered. Clear, direct, without shouting, without drama, just facts. Diego remained in his seat, his face flushed with the public humiliation he had just experienced. Camila was looking at her plate, unable to look up. And my parents finally seemed to understand the magnitude of what they had lost by choosing Diego over me all those years ago. But the night was just beginning, and what would come next would be even more revealing. The rest of the dinner passed in an uncomfortable silence, interrupted only by forced conversations and the clinking of cutlery against porcelain. Diego had lost all his previous bravado and was now drinking in silence, throwing me resentful glances every few minutes. Camila hadn't touched her food. She simply moved the salad around on her plate while watching Isabella with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. My mother tried to normalize the situation by talking to Isabella about trivial matters, the weather, the restaurant's decor, anything to fill the void. But Isabella, with her natural grace, responded kindly while maintaining a polite distance that made it clear she wasn't there to win anyone's approval. It was during dessert that things took an unexpected turn. My Aunt Gloria, my father's older sister, a 63-year-old woman known for her brutal frankness, decided she had had enough of the tense atmosphere. She stood up with her glass of champagne, tapping it lightly with a spoon to get everyone's attention. Since we're sharing honest speeches tonight, she announced in a firm voice, I have something to say too, Roberto, my father. He paled slightly. Gloria, maybe this isn't the time, it's exactly the time. She interrupted him. I've been silent for 10 years, respecting your decision to keep the family peace. But after hearing Diego's ridiculous speech, I think someone needs to say a few truths. All eyes turned to her. Isabella squeezed my hand under the table, her expression showing curiosity. 10 years ago, Aunt Gloria continued, this family made a shameful decision when Diego betrayed his own brother in the lowest possible way, when he shattered the trust and respect that should exist between brothers. You, she pointed at my parents, chose the easy path. You chose to pretend that everything was fine, that true love justified betrayal, that Matthias should simply get over it and move on. Mom began to protest. Gloria, don't you understand? I understand perfectly, Estella, my aunt interrupted. I understand you took the easy path because Diego has always been weaker, more dependent on you. I understand you feared that if you rejected him, you would lose him. So you sacrificed Matthias, the son who was always self-sufficient, the one who always managed on his own, the one who didn't need you to constantly rescue him from his mistakes. My aunt's words resonated in the room like bells of truth. Several relatives nodded discreetly. Evidently, She wasn't the only one who had thought this for years. And now, Aunt Gloria said, looking at Diego directly, "You have the nerve to mock your brother for being alone. When you stole his girlfriend and then had the audacity to marry her, you talk about true love and family. But what kind of love is built on a foundation of betrayal? What kind of family justifies that?" Diego stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You have no right to judge me. You don't know what we felt, Camila and I. I know what any decent person would know." My aunt interrupted him. "That if you really loved Camila, if you really couldn't help it." Camila had begun to cry silently, her makeup running down her cheeks. My father finally found his voice. "Gloria, I think that's enough. This is not the time or the place." "Roberto." My aunt looked at him with a mix of disappointment and affection. "You're my brother and I love you, but you've been a coward. Both of you have been," she added, looking at my mother. "You also had the opportunity to do the right thing 10 years ago. You could have told Diego that his actions had consequences. You could have shown him that family loyalty means something. Instead, you chose the easy path and lost your son in the process." She turned to me, her eyes softening. "Matthias, I haven't seen you in all these years, but I've followed your career from a distance. Your mother tells me things, although she probably shouldn't," she added with an ironic smile. "I'm proud of the man you've become. I'm proud that you didn't stay here wallowing in self-pity or seeking perfect revenge. You left and built something real, something valuable." Then she looked at Isabella with approval. "And apparently you found someone worthwhile, someone who clearly sees in you what your family was too blind to see." Isabella smiled warmly at my aunt. "Thank you, madam. That means a lot." Aunt Gloria raised her glass. "I toast to Matthias and Isabella for building a life based on mutual respect and true love, for proving that divine justice exists, even if it takes 10 years to arrive." Several relatives raised their glasses, some more enthusiastically than others. My parents didn't, Diego and Camila didn't either, but it didn't matter. The message had been sent and received after Aunt Gloria's toast. The atmosphere in the room changed noticeably. Some relatives began to approach our table, genuinely asking about my life, my work, congratulating me on my marriage. My cousin Andres, with whom I had been close during childhood, hugged me and said in a low voice, "I always knew Diego and Dad were wrong." Isabella handled all the attention with her characteristic elegance. She answered questions about how we met, about her work as an international business consultant, about our lives in the city. Each answer made it clearer and clearer that we were not an ordinary couple, that we had built something solid and real. Meanwhile, Diego and Camila remained isolated at their table. People avoided them as if family betrayal were contagious. I could see Camila trying to start conversations with some cousins, only to be met with short, cold answers. Diego, increasingly drunk, just drank and looked resentfully at everyone who came to greet me. It was around 10 p.m. when Camila stood up abruptly and left the room. Isabella looked at me, a silent question in her eyes. I nodded slightly, giving her permission to do what she was thinking. "I'm going to the restroom," Isabella announced in a low voice. "I'll be back in a moment." I watched her walk away, aware that she was probably going to meet Camila. Part of me wanted to stop her, to protect her from any unnecessary drama. But Isabella didn't need my protection. She was more than capable of handling any situation. While Isabella was away, my father finally approached my table. He looked older than I remembered, with more gray hair, more wrinkles around his eyes. He sat in the chair Isabella had left vacant without asking if he could. "Matthias," he began, his voice tired. "We need to talk." I looked at him without expression. "We are talking." He sighed heavily. "Your Aunt Gloria, what she said. Was it true?" I interrupted. "Every word. We did what we thought was best at the time." He tried to justify himself. "Diego is your brother. Camila, well, they seemed really in love. We didn't want to divide the family more than it already was, so you sacrificed me." I said calmly, "Because it was easier to lose the son who would leave anyway than to confront the son who always needs to be rescued." My father flinched as if I had hit him. "It wasn't like that, Dad." I interrupted him again. "I didn't come here tonight looking for apologies or explanations. I came because Isabella thought I needed to close this chapter properly, and she was right. I see it clearly now." "What do you see?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I see that for 10 years I blamed myself for not being enough, for not being the kind of son who deserved to be defended. But tonight I realized the problem was never me. It was I who left because it was the right thing to do, because I had enough dignity not to stay in a place where my pain mattered less than everyone else's comfort. Tears began to roll down my father's cheeks, something I hadn't seen since I was a child. Matthias, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for how we handled everything. Your mother and I made a terrible mistake. Yes, you did. I nodded. And that mistake cost you getting to know the man I became. It cost you being at my wedding. It cost you getting to know Isabella for the past 2 years. It cost you being part of the most important moments of my life. He wiped his tears awkwardly with the back of his hand. Is there any way to fix this? I don't know, I answered honestly. That depends on you. It depends on whether you're willing to really acknowledge what you did, not just with words, but with actions. It depends on whether you're ready to stop protecting Diego from the consequences of his decisions. Diego is my son too, my father said weakly. And so am I replied. Or at least I was. But for 10 years you treated me as if my pain didn't matter, as if my absence were just a tantrum I would eventually get over. You never asked what I was feeling, what I was living, whether I was okay or not. My father opened his mouth to answer, but just then Isabella returned. Her expression was serene, but there was something in her eyes that told me something significant had happened in the bathroom. My father stood up quickly, wiping his cheeks. Isabella, he mumbled by way of greeting. Mr. Roberto, she replied politely, taking her seat. My father looked at both of us for a moment longer, clearly wanting to say something else, but unable to find the words. Finally, he nodded awkwardly and returned to the main table where my mother was waiting for him with an anxious expression. What happened? I asked Isabella in a low voice. She took a sip of her water before answering. I had an interesting conversation with Camila. My eyebrows rose involuntarily. Camila, she talked to you. Or rather, she cried on me, Isabella corrected. At first, she tried to be hostile, asking me who I was to judge her, that I didn't know her story, but then she broke down. I leaned forward, genuinely curious. Now, what did she tell you? Isabella looked towards the table where Camila had returned and was sitting with her head bowed. She told me the last year has been the worst of her life, that Diego has become increasingly resentful, more bitter, that he drinks too much, that he constantly compares her to other women, that he reminds her that she left a successful man for him, and that she should be grateful that he still wants her. I felt a mix of emotions at that revelation. It wasn't satisfaction exactly, but it wasn't pity either. It was more of a confirmation of something I had suspected for years, that a relationship built on family betrayal could never be truly happy. Did she say anything else? I asked. Isabella nodded slowly. She told me that when she saw you come in tonight, she realized something. That for 10 years she's convinced herself that she made the right decision, that Diego was more exciting, more spontaneous, more alive than you. But seeing you now, seeing the man you've become, seeing how you look at me and how I look at you, she finally understood what she really lost. She didn't lose anything, I said firmly, because she never really had me. If she had, she would never have done what she did. That's what I told her, Isabella smiled. I also told her that true love is not just passion or excitement. It's respect, it's loyalty, it's choosing the same person every day, even when it's difficult. I told her that you and I built our marriage on a solid foundation, not on the rubble of someone else's pain. I loved her in that moment more than I thought possible. Isabella hadn't gone to the bathroom to confront Camila or to get revenge. She had gone because she saw someone in pain and responded with compassion, but also with truth. That was the difference between her and anyone else I had ever known. How did she react? I asked. She cried more, Isabella replied simply. Then she thanked me for being honest with her. She said no one had talked to her like that in years, that everyone just pretended everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Before I could respond, Diego appeared, staggering towards our table. His tie was loosened, his face was flushed, his eyes were glassy from the alcohol. He stopped in front of us, swaying slightly. So, he said, slurring his words, this is the famous Isabella, the perfect woman who makes my brother look so good too. Diego, I said in a warning voice, go away. You're drunk. Of course I'm drunk, he spat. It's a party. No, we're celebrating. We're celebrating 25 years of our parents' perfect marriage. We're celebrating your perfect marriage. Everything is perfect for you now, isn't it, Matthias? Isabella put a hand on my arm, a silent signal to let him talk, to let Diego dig himself deeper into his own misery. Do you know what's funny? Diego continued, getting dangerously close to our table. I won. 10 years ago. I took everything from you. I took your girlfriend. I got the love of the family. And what did you do? You ran away like a coward. I didn't run away, I replied calmly. I left because I had too much respect for myself to stay in a place where my pain was ignored. Pain. He laughed bitterly. You didn't even really love her. If you loved her, you would have fought for her. But you didn't. You just left. You're right, I said. And I saw surprise cross his face. I didn't fight for Camila. And do you know why? Because I realized something that afternoon when I found you together. I realized that if she was capable of betraying me in that way with my own brother, in my own bed, then she was never the right person for me. I stood up, facing him directly. So thank you, Diego. Thank you for showing me who Camila really was before I made the mistake of marrying her. Thank you for saving me from a life of doubt and distrust. And above all, thank you for being exactly who you are, because your family betrayal freed me to find something real. Diego looked at me with pure hatred. Do you think you're better than me? Do you think you won? I don't think I won, I replied. I know I won. Look at my life, Diego. Then look at yours. Tell me who really came out on top in all this. For a moment I thought he was going to hit me. His fists clenched, his jaw tightened. But then, as quickly as the rage had come, it vanished. His shoulders slumped, his face crumpled, and for a second I saw the younger brother who used to admire me before everything was destroyed. He began, but he couldn't continue. He turned and stumbled towards the bathroom, leaving us in a tense silence. Isabella and I remained seated in silence for several minutes after Diego left. The room had emptied considerably. Many guests, uncomfortable with the family tensions they had witnessed, had begun to say their goodbyes discreetly to my parents and leave. My mother approached our table, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She sat down without asking permission, looking at me with a pleading expression I hadn't seen on her since I was a child and had been denied something I really wanted. Matthias, she began in a trembling voice, I need you to know something. All these years, not a single day went by that I didn't think of you, that I didn't wonder how you were, if you were happy, but you never called, I replied without emotion. You never really asked. You sent messages on birthdays and Christmas, but you never asked how I felt about everything that happened. I was afraid, she admitted, tears starting to run down her cheeks. I was afraid that if I pushed too hard you'd pull away completely. I was afraid of losing you completely. Then you lost me anyway, I said softly. Because the distance you kept out of fear created exactly what you feared. I became a stranger. Someone who appears in social media photos, but isn't really part of your life. I know. I'm sorry. I know, and you don't know how much I regret it. When I saw that picture of your wedding on Facebook, when I realized you had gotten married without without even telling us, it broke my heart. Isabella, who had been listening in silence, spoke for the first time. Mrs. Estella, with all due respect, Matthias didn't get married without you to hurt you. He got married without you because that day was about us, about our true love, about starting our life together without the shadows of the past. It wasn't an act of perfect revenge, it was an act of self-care. My mother looked at Isabella with a mix of surprise and gradual understanding. You understand, don't you? You understand what happened? How we went wrong. I understand that you made decisions that deeply hurt your son, Isabella replied gently, but firmly. I understand that you prioritized keeping the peace over doing the right thing, and I understand that those decisions had consequences that lasted a decade. My mother nodded slowly, wiping her tears with a napkin. You're good for him. I can see it. The way he looks at you, the way he talks about you. I never saw that with Camila, because what Matthias and I have is different, Isabella explained. It's built on mutual respect, on honest communication, on choosing to be together every day, not on impulsive passion or family betrayal. My mother flinched at the mention of betrayal, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned back to me. What can I do, Matthias? What can your father and I do to start repairing this? Honestly, Mom, I sighed. I don't know. The damage of 10 years isn't fixed in one night. It's not fixed with apologies and tears. It's fixed with consistent actions over time. We're willing, she said quickly, to whatever it takes. Then, start by being honest, I said, with yourselves. With me, with the whole family. Stop pretending that what Diego did was okay, just because it resulted in a marriage. Acknowledge that you took the easy path and that it came at a cost. We will, she promised. I will. And Diego, I continued, needs to face the consequences of his actions. You can't keep rescuing him, covering for him, justifying him. If you really want to rebuild this family, he needs to grow up and take responsibility. My mother nodded, although I could see the internal struggle in her eyes. Diego had always been her weakness, her baby, the one who needed protection. Changing that wouldn't be easy for her. Isabella and I are going to leave soon, I announced. It's been a long and emotionally draining night. Please, my mother reached for my hand. Can I call you? Not to pressure you or to force anything, just to talk. To get to know you again. I looked at Isabella, seeking her silent opinion. She nodded slightly, giving me her blessing. You can call, I finally agreed. But Mom, I need you to understand something. If we're going to rebuild any kind of relationship, it has to be real. No more pretending, no more secrets, no more favoritism. If you can't do that, then it's better to leave it as it is. I can, she insisted. I promise. We stood up to leave. My father had approached during the conversation, staying in the background, but listening to every word. As we passed him, he stopped me with a hand on my shoulder. Son, he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm proud of the man you've become, not because of us, but in spite of us. I nodded, not trusting my voice to answer. I had waited to hear those words for 10 years, and now that I finally heard them, I didn't know how to feel about it. Isabella and I said our goodbyes to the few remaining relatives. Aunt Gloria hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, I knew you'd be the one to succeed. I always knew. As we walked to the parking lot, the cool night air was a welcome relief after the charged atmosphere of the room. Isabella linked her arm with mine, resting her head on my shoulder. How do you feel? She asked softly. Exhausted, I admitted, but also liberated, as if I had finally closed a door that had been open for too long. I'm proud of you, she said, of how you handled everything. You didn't stoop to their level. You didn't seek perfect revenge. You just told your truth and let it speak for itself. I learned from the best. I smiled, kissing her temple. We reached our car, a luxury sedan that reflected the success I had built. Just as I was opening the door for Isabella, I heard hurried footsteps behind us. Matthias, wait. I turned to find Camila running towards us, her heels clattering against the pavement. She stopped a few feet away, panting slightly, her makeup streaked and her hair disheveled by the wind. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice desperate. Please. Isabella looked at me, a silent question in her eyes. I nodded slightly. It's okay, love. It'll just be a moment. I'll be in the car, Isabella said, squeezing my hand before getting into the vehicle. Camila and I stood in the parking lot. The silence between us filled with 10 years of unsaid things. What do you want, Camila? I asked, not unkindly, but not warmly either. She hugged herself as if she were cold despite the mild night. I need you to know I'm sorry. I know it's too late. I know it probably doesn't mean anything to you now, but I need to say it. It's okay, I said simply. No, it's not okay, she insisted, her voice breaking. Nothing has been okay since that afternoon. I thought I was choosing passion over stability, excitement over predictability, but what I was really doing was destroying something real for something that only seemed exciting on the surface. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, after 10 years. Because seeing you tonight, seeing how you look at Isabella, how she looks at you, how you are together, I realized what I really lost. And it's not just you, Matthias. I lost the chance to have what you two have. True love, real respect, a partner who chooses you every day. You and Diego could have that, I suggested, even though we both knew it wasn't true. She laughed bitterly. Diego didn't choose me because he loved me. He chose me because I was yours. Our whole relationship has been about you, about proving he could take something from you, that he could win. And I was foolish enough to believe that was love. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I'm sorry you spent 10 years in a relationship that doesn't make you happy. It was my fault, she admitted, my mistake, and now I have to live with the consequences. But Matthias, I need you to know something. If I could go back in time, if I could undo what I did. She stopped as if she realized there were no words that could change the past. I wouldn't, I said softly. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't change anything because everything that happened led me exactly where I needed to be. It led me to Isabella. It led me to a life I love. It led me to become the man I am today. Camila nodded, fresh tears running down her cheeks. She's lucky, Isabella. She's lucky to have you, and I to have her. I replied, that's the difference, Camila. It's not about who's lucky. It's about two people who choose to build something together, who respect each other, who are honest even when it's hard. She looked towards the car where Isabella was waiting patiently. Take care of her, she said in a low voice. And let her take care of you. I do, I promised. Every day, Camila took a step towards me as if she were going to hug me, but she stopped. Instead, she just nodded one last time and turned around, walking back towards the restaurant with her shoulders slumped and her head bowed. I got into the car, where Isabella was waiting for me with an understanding expression. Is she okay? She asked. She will be. I replied, eventually. We all will be. As we drove back to our house, to our life, I let the weight of the night slip off my shoulders. I had faced my past, I had told my truth, and I had discovered that divine justice wasn't about revenge or seeing others suffer. It was simply about living well, about building something real, about choosing true love over resentment. The days following the anniversary dinner were strangely calm. Isabella and I, normal routine. Work, dinners together, nights watching series, weekends exploring the city. It was as if the confrontation with my family had been a dream, except for the fact that my phone now received regular messages from my mother. At first they were short, cautious texts. Good morning, Matthias. Hope you have a good day. Then they became more personal. I saw a news story about Banco Continental. You must be very busy with the expansion to Brazil. And finally, what I think she really wanted to say all along. I miss you, son. I miss knowing you. I didn't answer all the messages. Some I just read and left unanswered. Others deserved a brief reply. Thanks, Mom. Or yes, the Brazil project is challenging, but exciting. I wasn't ready for long conversations, but I was willing to take small steps. My father, true to his more reserved nature, sent less frequent but more meaningful messages. One in particular touched my heart. I've been reflecting on what you said at dinner. You're right. I took the easy path because I was afraid of losing Diego, but in doing so I lost you. That was the real mistake. Isabella encouraged me to keep these lines of communication open. You don't have to forgive immediately, she'd say as we prepared dinner together. But giving them the chance to prove they can change, that's not for them. It's for you. So you don't carry the guilt of not having tried. 3 weeks after the dinner, I received an unexpected call. It was from Aunt Gloria. Matthias, she said. Without preamble, I need to tell you something. Diego and Camila are separating. I stopped in the middle of the street, on my way to an important meeting. What? They're separating? She repeated. Your mother called me last night hysterical. Apparently, after the anniversary dinner, things between them deteriorated quickly. Diego became more resentful, more bitter. Camila finally had the courage to admit she wasn't happy and that she couldn't keep pretending. I don't know what to say, I admitted. You don't have to say anything, my aunt replied. I just thought you should know. And Matthias, this isn't your fault. It's no one's fault except their own. They built their relationship on a rotten foundation, and eventually, I think they're finally starting to realize the real damage they caused by allowing that relationship to continue. That night, I told Isabella about the call. She listened in silence as I processed the information out loud. Part of me feels, I don't know, justified, I admitted, as if the universe is finally proving I was right, that a relationship built on family betrayal could never be solid. And the other part of you? Isabella asked softly. The other part feels sad, I confessed. Sad for the lost time, for the damaged relationships, for the fact that we all lost so much in this mess. Isabella took my hand. That makes you human, my love, and it makes you a better person than those who would only feel satisfaction. A month later, my mother called, asking me to meet. Just the two of us, she said. Without your father, without Diego, just you and me. I agreed to meet her at a neutral cafe, not at her house or mine. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a corner table with a coffee in front of her that she seemed not to have touched. She looked smaller than I remembered, more fragile. Thank you for coming, she said when I sat down across from her. I ordered my own coffee before answering. You said you wanted to talk. She nodded, her hands trembling slightly as they wrapped around the cup. I guess you've already heard about Diego and Camila. Aunt Gloria told me. I confirmed. It's been awful, Matthias. Diego is living with us again. He's not working. He barely leaves his room. Camila moved in with her parents. They're both devastated. She waited as if she wanted me to say something compassionate, to offer help. I didn't. I just waited for her to continue. Your father and I have been talking a lot these past few weeks, she finally continued, about everything that happened, about the decisions we made, and we realized something terrible. Matthias, we sacrificed you. We sacrificed you to maintain the illusion that everything was fine, that we were a perfect family. Her voice broke, and in doing so we lost our son, the son we should have been most proud of. I didn't know what to say. For 10 years I had waited to hear this, and now that I was hearing it, I didn't feel the satisfaction I expected. I just felt tired. Mom, I said finally, breaking the silence that had settled between us. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate that you're finally acknowledging what happened. But I need to be honest with you. I don't know if I can just forgive and forget 10 years of pain. I'm not asking you to forget, she said quickly. I could never ask that of you. I'm just asking for the chance to prove I can be better, that we can be better. How? I asked, not with hostility, but with genuine curiosity. How do you plan to be different? She took a deep breath, as if she had been preparing for this question. For starters, your father and I told Diego he needs to leave our house. We gave him 2 months to find his own place. No more rescues. No more allowing him to avoid facing his life. That must have been hard for you. I observed. You've always protected Diego. Too much, she admitted, her eyes filling with tears. I protected him so much that I never allowed him to grow up. I never allowed him to face real consequences, and in doing so I turned him into a man who can't stand on his own 2 feet. She took a shaky sip of her coffee before continuing. We also want to get to know Isabella better, invite her to dinner, spend time with her, show her that we value her not just as your wife, but as a person. If she's willing, of course, I'll have to ask her, I said, but I think she'd be open to the idea. Isabella believes in giving second chances when people show genuine change. My mother smiled faintly. She sounds wise. She is, I agreed. She's the wisest person I know. There was another silence, but this one was more comfortable. My mother fiddled with her napkin, clearly wanting to say something else, but struggling to find the words. What else, Mom? I prompted gently. She looked me directly in the eye for the first time since our conversation had begun. I want to know you, Matthias. Really know you. Not just know about your work or where you live. I want to know what makes you happy, what worries you, what your dreams are. I want to be your mother for real, not just someone who shares your blood. The vulnerability in her voice was genuine. This was not the perfectly composed mother who always presented a flawless facade to the world. This was a broken woman who was finally admitting her mistakes. That's going to take time, I told her honestly. You can't make up for 10 years in one conversation. I know, she nodded. But I'm willing to try, step by step, day by day, if you'll let me. I looked at my mother. I really looked at her for the first time in years. I saw the lines of worry on her face, the weariness in her eyes, the weight of her own regrets, and I realized that holding on to my resentment wasn't punishing her. It was punishing myself. Okay, I said. Finally, we can try, but I need you to understand that if this is going to work, it has to be on my terms. No more secrets, no more favoritism, no more pretending problems don't exist. Understood, she said, her face lighting up with genuine hope. Completely understood. We spent the next hour really talking. Perhaps for the first time in our lives, I told her about my work, about the challenges of managing international operations, about my plans to eventually open my own consulting firm. I told her about Isabella, about how we met, about the first few months of our relationship when we were both so cautious because of our past hurts. She listened, really listened, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest. She didn't try to advise or correct, she just let me talk. In return, she told me things I had never known, about her own fears and insecurities, about how the pressure to maintain the image of a perfect family had consumed her for years, about how Diego and Camila's divorce had been a brutal wake-up call that forced her to confront truths she had been avoiding. When we finally said our goodbyes, there was something different between us. It wasn't complete forgiveness. It wasn't the mother-son relationship we might have had if things had been different. But it was a beginning. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt that maybe, just maybe, we could build something real. That night, as I told Isabella about my meeting with my mother, she hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, she said. I know how hard it must have been to give her that chance. You inspired me. I admitted, if you can believe in second chances after everything you've been through, I can try too. 2 weeks later, my parents came to our house for dinner. It was the first time they had set foot in our home, the sanctuary Isabella and I had built together. I saw my mother looking at every detail, the photos of our travels on the walls, the books stacked on the shelves, the plants Isabella meticulously cared for. "Your home is beautiful," my mother said sincerely. "It feels warm, welcoming." "Isabella and I worked hard on it," I replied. "We wanted it to be a place where we could be completely ourselves." The dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Isabella had prepared an Italian menu, honoring her roots, and my parents made a genuine effort to get to know her. They asked about her family, her work, her passions, and most importantly, they listened. My father, usually so reserved, opened up about his own regrets. "I spent so much time building a career that I neglected to build real relationships with my children," he admitted. "Now I see the cost of those choices." Isabella, with her characteristic grace, responded with compassion, but also with honesty. "It's never too late to change, Mr. Roberto. Matthias is living evidence of that. He changed his life completely after what happened. You can too." After dinner, while Isabella was making coffee, my father asked to speak with me alone. We went out onto the balcony, where the city spread out before us in a sea of lights. "Son," he began, looking out at the horizon instead of at me, "there's something I need to tell you. Something I never told you 10 years ago." I waited, giving him time to gather his thoughts. "When you left that night after finding Diego and Camila, I came looking for you," he confessed. "I got to your apartment just as you were loading the last of your boxes into the car. I parked down the street and just sat there watching you." "Why didn't you get out of the car?" I asked. "Why didn't you talk to me?" "Because I was a coward," he said simply. "I saw the pain on your face. I saw how your hands trembled as you closed the trunk. And I knew that if I got out of that car, if I looked you in the eye, I would have to choose. I would have to say that what Diego did was wrong, that I couldn't support him. But I was afraid that if I did, your mother would never forgive me for dividing the family." His hands gripped the balcony railing. "So I watched you drive away, and I told myself I was doing the right thing by keeping the peace. But the truth is I took the cowardly way out, and that decision has haunted me every day since." "Dad," I began, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish, please. For all these years I've justified myself by saying I was protecting the family, but what I was really doing was protecting myself from the difficult conversations, from the uncomfortable consequences, from having to admit that I had raised a son who was capable of betraying his own brother." He turned to look at me finally, tears in his eyes. "I can't change that night. I can't get those 10 years back. But I can tell you now what I should have told you. Then, what Diego did was wrong, unforgivably wrong. And we were wrong to allow it, to justify it, to ask you to just get over it." For the first time in my adult life, I saw my father cry openly. This man who had always been the picture of composure, who never showed weakness, was broken in front of me. "You lost more than a girlfriend that night," he continued. "You lost your sense of security, your trust in your family, your home, and we failed you when you needed us most. I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry more than words can express." I went to him, and after a moment's hesitation I hugged him. He clung to me as if he were drowning, and I were his lifeline. I felt his shoulders shake with sobs suppressed for years. "Thank you for telling me this," I said when we finally separated. "It means more than you know." He nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Your mother was right. You're the best of us. You always were. It's not about being better, Dad," I said gently. "It's about learning to live with the consequences of our decisions. You and Mom made decisions that came at a cost. I made the decision to leave, and that also came at a cost. But in the end, we all have to decide whether we're going to let those decisions define us, or whether we're going to grow from them." We went back inside where Isabella and my mother were deep in conversation. My mother was showing her photos on her phone, photos of me as a child that I had never seen. Isabella was listening with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at the appropriate moments. It was strange to see them like that, my wife and my mother, connecting in a way I never thought would be possible. And I realized that this was what Isabella had seen from the beginning, this possibility of healing, of growth, of second chances. When my parents finally left that night, after promises of future dinners and visits, Isabella and I stood in the doorway of our home, watching them drive away. "How do you feel?" Isabella asked, intertwining her fingers with mine. As if something that had been broken for a long time was finally beginning to heal, I replied, "It's not perfect. It probably never will be, but it's real, and that's more valuable than perfection." She rested her head on my shoulder. I agree. Over the next few months, the relationship with my parents continued to evolve slowly. There was no magical moment of complete reconciliation. There was no cinematic hug where everything was resolved instantly. Instead, it was a gradual process of rebuilding, brick by brick, conversation by conversation. We established clear boundaries, family dinners once a month, weekly phone calls that were to focus on real conversation, not superficial small talk. And most importantly, a mutual understanding that Diego needed to find his own way without constant interference. Diego, for his part, eventually moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. According to my mother, he had gotten a job at a mechanic shop, something completely different from his ex-father-in-law's used car business. It was a humble beginning, but it was his. We had no direct contact. Sometimes my mother would mention how he was doing, and I would listen politely, but without asking questions. That wound was still too fresh, too deep. Maybe one day we could have some kind of relationship, but I wasn't ready for that yet, and that was okay. Camila, on the other hand, had completely disappeared from our lives. According to my cousin, she had moved to another city, starting over in a place where no one knew her story. I hoped she found peace. I hoped she learned from her mistakes, but her story was no longer part of mine. 6 months after the anniversary dinner, Isabella and I received news that would change our lives once again. She was pregnant. The news filled us with a joy I hadn't felt in years. We immediately started planning, preparing, imagining what our life would be like as parents. And this time, when we told my family, the response was completely different. My mother cried with happiness. My father hugged us both, murmuring congratulations in an emotional voice. And when they asked if they could be involved, if they could be part of their grandchild's life, Isabella and I exchanged a look and nodded. "Yes," I said, "under our terms, with clear boundaries, but yes, we want this baby to know their grandparents." The expression of pure gratitude on my parents' faces was enough to confirm that we had made the right decision. I wasn't giving them a second chance for them. I was giving it for my child, so they would have the extended family I had lost. But I was also giving it for myself, because I had realized that carrying resentment only hurt me. Forgiving didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing not to let the past poison my future. One night, as Isabella slept beside me, her hand on her barely visible belly, I found myself thinking about Diego. I wondered if he had found some measure of peace, if he had learned anything from all this. Part of me hoped so, not for him, but because divine justice wasn't about seeing others suffer. It was about all of us finding our way to redemption, each at our own pace. I picked up my phone, and after a long moment of hesitation, I wrote a message. Not to Diego, but to my mother. "Mom," I wrote, "I've been thinking, when the baby is born, if Diego wants to meet his nephew or niece, he can, under supervision, with clear boundaries. But he can. Everyone deserves a chance to grow." Her reply came minutes later. "Thank you, Matthias. That means more than you know. Your father and I are so proud of the man you are." I put the phone down and snuggled next to Isabella, wrapping my arm protectively around her and our unborn child. I had come a long way since that night 10 years ago when I found my brother with my girlfriend. I had lost a lot on that journey, but I had also gained so much more. I had a wife who loved me unconditionally, a successful career that filled me with satisfaction, and soon I would have a child. I had a healing relationship with my parents, built on honesty and mutual respect, and I had peace, something I had been searching for years without knowing how to find it. The perfect revenge had not been to destroy Diego or Camila. It had been to build a life so full, so rich, so filled with true love, that their family betrayal had become irrelevant. They had lost the ability to hurt me because I had found something more valuable than anything they could take from me. As I fell asleep with Isabella breathing softly beside me, I knew with certainty that divine justice was not about karma or revenge. It was simply about living well, loving deeply, and choosing growth over resentment. And in that, I had gained more than I had ever lost. Isabella's pregnancy went smoothly. Every ultrasound was a reminder of the life we were creating together. My parents were present every step of the way that we allowed them, respecting the boundaries we set without question. It was a refreshing change to see them genuinely striving to be better. One Saturday afternoon, 3 months before the due date, I received an unexpected call. It was Diego Matias. His voice sounded different, more mature, perhaps less arrogant. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to tell you something. I'm listening, I replied cautiously. I heard about the baby. Congratulations, and I want to apologize properly, not over the phone. Could you meet me? Just the two of us. Isabella, who had heard the conversation, looked at me with a silent question in her eyes. I nodded slowly. Okay, Central Cafe. Tomorrow at 4. I'll be there, Diego said, and Matias, thank you for giving me this chance. When I arrived at Central Cafe the next day, Diego was already waiting at a table in the back. He looked different. He had lost the weight he had gained during his marriage to Camila. His clothes were simple, but clean. And there was something in his posture that suggested humility instead of the arrogance that had always characterized his personality. Matias, he said, standing up as I approached. Thanks for coming. We sat in an uncomfortable silence as the waiter took our orders. When he finally left, Diego took a deep breath. I don't know where to start, he admitted. I've rehearsed this 1,000 times in my head, but now that you're here, all the words sound inadequate. Then just be honest, I suggested. It's the only thing that matters now. He nodded, looking at his coffee cup as if it held the answers he was looking for. After Camila and I separated, I hit rock bottom. I lost my job, I lost the apartment I was renting. I ended up living with mom and dad again like a failed teenager, and during those dark months I had a lot of time to think. He looked up to meet my gaze. I thought about what I did to you. Not just the obvious family betrayal of sleeping with Camila, but everything that came after. The way I married her, knowing I was destroying you. The way I let mom and dad protect me from the consequences. The way for 10 years I convinced myself I had won something when in reality, I had only lost my brother. What you did was wrong, I said. There's just no way to sugarcoat that. I know, he nodded. And for a long time I tried to justify it. I told myself I was in love, that I couldn't help it, that you would eventually get over it. But the truth is uglier than that, Matias. The truth is I was jealous of you. Jealous, I repeated, genuinely surprised. I always was, he admitted. You were the older brother, the responsible one, the one who always had everything under control. You got good grades without effort. You got a great job. You found a beautiful girlfriend and I was the baby of the family, the one who always needed help, the one who never seemed to be able to do anything on his own. He paused, his hands gripping the cup. When Camila showed interest in me, it was like a validation I had never had. I finally had something you wanted. I was finally the one winning. And that feeling was so intoxicating that I didn't care about the cost. So, you used me, I said, me and Camila, to feel better about yourself. Yes, he admitted without excuses. And then when I married her, every day was a reminder that my victory was hollow, because our relationship was built on your pain. And that foundation was never solid. Every time we argued, every time she mentioned how different you were from her, every time we went through some problem, I knew it was the price of my family betrayal. The waiter brought our coffees, interrupting the moment. When he left, Diego continued. Seeing you and Isabella at the anniversary dinner was like getting punched in the gut. I saw what true love really looks like. I saw how you looked at each other, how you supported each other, how you just existed together with such naturalness. And I realized I never had that with Camila. I never would because we started the wrong way. What do you want from me, Diego? I asked directly. Why are we here? He looked me directly in the eye for the first time. I don't want anything. I just needed to tell you I'm sorry, that I understand the damage I caused, that if I could change what I did, I would do it in a second. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But I can't. The only thing I can do is tell you that I've spent the last few months working on myself. I go to therapy twice a week. I'm working at a mechanic shop, earning my own money without depending on mom and dad. I'm trying to become someone I can be proud of, not by comparison to anyone else, but on my own merits. That's good, I said sincerely. I'm glad you're doing that work. Mom told me that when your baby is born I might have the chance to meet them. He continued. I want you to know that I won't take that chance for granted. If you decide you don't want me to be part of your child's life, I will completely understand. I looked at my younger brother. I really looked at him for the first time in years. I saw a broken man who was trying to put himself back together. I saw genuine remorse. But I also saw something else. The possibility of real growth. Diego, I said slowly, I'm not going to lie and say everything is forgiven or that we can go back to being brothers like before. Too much has happened for that. I understand, he said quickly, but I continued. I believe in second chances for people who show genuine change. If you continue with your therapy, if you keep working on being a better person, if you respect the boundaries Isabella and I set, then yes, eventually you can meet your nephew or niece. I saw his eyes fill with tears. Thank you, Matthias. You don't know what that means, but you need to understand something. I added firmly. This isn't for you. It's for my child. I want him to grow up knowing his extended family, including you. But if at any point your presence becomes toxic or problematic, I will not hesitate to cut you off completely. Understood. He nodded vigorously. Completely understood. And Diego, I said one last thing. I need you to understand that we will never have the relationship we had. We can't. Too much was broken. But maybe over time we can build something new, something based on mutual respect and honesty instead of competition and jealousy. I'd like that, he said in a low voice. I'd like that a lot. We finished our coffees talking about superficial things. His work at the shop, my preparations for the baby, the changes in the city. It wasn't comfortable, but it was civil. And for now, that was enough. When I told Isabella about my meeting with Diego, she listened attentively before answering. How do you feel about it? She asked. Honestly, I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to believe he's really changed. Another part is waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for him to disappoint again. She took my hand. That's a completely valid reaction. But you know what? The fact that you're willing to give him a chance, despite your skepticism, shows how far you've come in your own healing. 2 months later, our son was born. Santiago, we named him in honor of Isabella's grandfather. He was perfect in every way, with Isabella's eyes and what she swore was my nose. My parents arrived at the hospital within the first hour, bringing flowers and tears of joy. We let them hold Santiago, photograph the moment, be the grandparents they wanted to be. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt we were truly a family. Diego asked to visit us a week after the birth. He arrived with a modest teddy bear and a handwritten card. I watched him as he held Santiago with extreme care, his eyes filled with wonder. He's beautiful, Matthias, he murmured. He looks like you. He looks like himself, I corrected gently. He's his own person. Diego spent only 20 minutes with us before saying goodbye, respecting the time limit we had set. As he was leaving, he stopped at the door. Thanks for letting me meet him, he said. I don't take it lightly. Over the next few months, we established a routine. Diego could visit once a month, always with at least one of us present. The visits were short, but positive. He'd bring small, appropriate gifts, ask about Santiago's development, and leave when it was time. One day, 6 months after Santiago's birth, Diego arrived with news. I met someone, he announced with a shy smile. Her name is Patricia. She's a therapist at the clinic where I go for my sessions. We started talking after I finished my formal treatment. And well, it's different, Matthias. She knows me, knows my mistakes, my history, everything, and she still wants to get to know me better. I'm happy for you, I said, and I meant it. I'm taking it slow this time, he explained, learning to build something on a solid foundation, like you and Isabella. Isabella, who was feeding Santiago, blushed. That's wise, Diego. The relationships that last are the ones that are built patiently. Over time, my relationship with Diego evolved into something I had never imagined. We weren't the close brothers we had been in childhood. We probably never would be. But we were two adult men who had learned hard lessons and were trying to make peace with their past. The real divine justice, I realized, was not in Diego and Camila's separation or in their subsequent suffering. It was in the growth we had all experienced as a result of our choices. Diego had hit rock bottom and had used that experience to rebuild himself. My parents had faced the consequences of their favoritism and had chosen to change. And I had learned that forgiving didn't mean forgetting, but choosing not to let the past poison my future. One evening, as I watched Santiago play on his blanket, Isabella sat down beside me. What are you thinking about? She asked. About how far we've come, I replied. A year ago, I would never have imagined I'd be here with our family reconciling, with Diego genuinely trying to be better, with a beautiful son who unites us all. Are you at peace with everything? She asked. I thought about it before answering. It's not that I'm at peace with what happened. Diego's family betrayal still hurts when I think about it, but I'm at peace with where I am now, with who I am, with the life we've built. She looked at me with those eyes that always seemed to see right into my soul. That's all we can ask for, my love. Not perfection, but peace. That night, after putting Santiago to bed, I found myself reflecting on the last 10 years. I had lost a lot on that journey. A girlfriend I thought I loved, years of relationship with my family, the innocence of believing that blood always meant loyalty, but I had also gained so much more. I had found true love with Isabella, a woman who saw me completely and chose me every day. I had built a successful career that I was genuinely proud of. I had learned to set healthy boundaries and to demand the respect I deserved. And I had a son who had taught me that the purest love is the one that gives without expectation of anything in return. The perfect revenge had not been to destroy those who had hurt me. It had been to build a life so rich, so full, so meaningful, that their betrayal became nothing more than a catalyst for my growth. And in that I had found something more valuable than any victory. I had found peace. 5 years have passed since that anniversary dinner that changed everything. Santiago is now 4.5 years old, and 6 months ago his sister Lucia arrived. My life has become a beautiful routine of diapers, children's laughter, sleepless nights, and unconditional love. Isabella and I are still the solid team we always were. She reduced her workload to spend more time with the children, but she remains a powerful force in her field. I, for my part, finally took the step of opening my own consulting firm 2 years ago. It's more work and more risk, but it's also more satisfying than anything I've ever done before. My parents are devoted grandparents. They come to visit us every 2 weeks, take Santiago to the park, help with Lucia when we need a break. They have kept every promise they made 5 years ago. They're not perfect, no one is, but they're genuine, and that's what matters. Diego married Patricia 2 years ago in a small, intimate ceremony. Isabella and I attended along with our parents and a few close friends. It was strange to be at my brother's wedding, but it was also healing in a way I didn't expect. Seeing Diego genuinely happy with a woman who challenges him to be better every day confirmed to me that people really can change when they are willing to do the hard work. Now Diego runs his own mechanic shop. It's small, just him and 2 employees, but it's his, and it's thriving. Patricia continues to work as a therapist, and together they seem to have found a healthy balance. We're not close brothers, we probably never will be, but we're cordial. We see each other at family gatherings. Our children play together, and there's mutual respect. Patricia is pregnant now, expecting her first child. When Diego told me, there was nervousness in his eyes, as if he feared that somehow his happiness could hurt me. I assured him I was genuinely happy for him, and I was. Camila completely disappeared from our lives. I heard through the grapevine that she moved abroad, started a career in graphic design, and is in a serious relationship with someone she met there. I wish her the best. We all deserve a chance to start over. Aunt Gloria, who was instrumental in starting the family healing process that night at the restaurant, passed away last year. It was peaceful, surrounded by family. At her funeral, my father gave an emotional speech about how she always had the courage to say the difficult truths that others avoided. He publicly thanked her for shaking our family out of its complacency. It was one of the most honest moments I've ever seen from my father. Sometimes, when I put Santiago to sleep, he asks me about the family, about why we don't see Uncle Diego as often as the grandparents. I've explained to him in age-appropriate terms that sometimes people make mistakes that take a long time to heal, but that the important thing is that everyone is trying to be better. He accepts it with the simplicity with which children accept complicated things. For him, Uncle Diego is just Uncle Diego, the one who fixes cars and teaches him about tools. He doesn't carry the weight of our history, and that's exactly how it should be. Isabella and I, we celebrated our 7th wedding anniversary. Last month we went back to Italy, to Tuscany, where we got married, leaving the children with my parents for a week. It was the first time in years that we were completely alone, without parenting responsibilities, just the 2 of us. One night, as we were having dinner at a small restaurant overlooking the vineyards, she took my hand. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Of giving me a chance after everything you'd been through, of taking a risk again?" "Never," I replied without hesitation. "You saved me, Isabella. You saved me from becoming a bitter and closed-off person. You showed me that true love exists, that it's worth taking a risk, that the right people choose to stay. And you showed me," she said with tears in her eyes, that strength isn't about not breaking. It's about rebuilding yourself stronger after you've been broken. I kissed her then under the Italian stars in the country where we started our life together, and I realized that this was the real divine justice. Not revenge, not seeing others suffer, but simply finding your own happiness so completely that the past loses its power over you. A few days ago, I received a text message from Diego. It was a picture of an ultrasound, his future son moving inside Patricia's womb. The message said, "Thank you for showing me how to be a good father through your example with Santiago and Lucia. I hope I can do half as well as you." I replied, "You'll do great. And if you ever need advice, I'm here." 5 years ago, I would never have imagined writing those words. But people change, families heal, and forgiveness, when given to people who genuinely deserve it, can be the most liberating act of all. Last night, as Isabella slept beside me and I listened to the baby monitor broadcasting Lucia's soft breathing, I thought about that afternoon 15 years ago when I found Diego and Camila in my bed. I thought about the devastating pain, the feeling that my world was falling apart. If I could go back and talk to that 28-year-old Matthias, I would tell him that everything is going to be okay, that the pain he feels now is real and valid, but that it will not define him. That the family betrayal he is experiencing will eventually lead him to Isabella, to Santiago, to Lucia, to a life richer than he ever imagined. I would tell him that the perfect revenge is not to plan the downfall of those who hurt you. It's to build a life so beautiful that their betrayal becomes nothing more than a footnote in your success story. I would tell him that true love exists, that family can heal, and that divine justice doesn't always look like we expect it to, but it always comes. This morning, as we were having breakfast as a family, Santiago spilled his juice on the table. Diego and Patricia are coming for dinner tonight with my parents, one of our monthly family gatherings. Isabella is making her famous lasagna. Lucia is in her high chair squishing banana in her hair. The house is full of noise, chaos, and life. And as I wipe up the spilled juice, listening to Isabella laugh at something Santiago just said, holding Lucia against my chest, I can't help but smile. This is my perfect revenge, this chaotic, beautiful life, full of true love, this family I've built with Isabella, this moment right now, where I am completely happy, without needing anyone else to suffer for my satisfaction. My brother stole my girlfriend 15 years ago. 10 years later, he mocked me for being single, and then he saw my wife. He saw my life. He saw everything I had built from the ashes of his family betrayal, and he realized, as everyone eventually realized, that I had lost nothing, because everything that really mattered was yet to come. That is the real divine justice, not the suffering of those who hurt you, but the realization that you built something so valuable, that their betrayal became the catalyst you needed to find your true destiny. And my destiny, it turns out, is here, in this noisy kitchen, with this incredible woman by my side, with these two beautiful children who fill every day with purpose, with this imperfect but healing family that finally learned what really matters. Diego thought he had taken everything from me 15 years ago. He didn't know he was freeing me to find everything I really needed. And for that, in the deepest part of my heart, I almost thank him, because without that betrayal, without that pain, without that necessary break, I would never have found this path. I would never have found Isabella. I would never have built this life. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best gift in disguise. You just need the time and distance to see it. As I finish cleaning up the breakfast mess, Santiago tugs on my shirt. "Daddy," he says with those big eyes that always melt me. "I love you. I love you too, champ," I reply, lifting him into my arms. Isabella looks at the three of us with Lucia now on her lap and smiles with that smile that still takes my breath away after 7 years. "We're lucky," she says simply, and she's right. We're incredibly lucky, not because nothing bad ever happened to us, but because we chose to build something beautiful in spite of it. That night, when Diego and Patricia arrive with my parents, there's an awkward moment at the entrance. Diego looks at me, and in his eyes I see something that wasn't there before. Genuine peace. Not the false peace of pretending the past didn't exist, but the real peace that comes from having faced it and grown from it. "Thanks for having us," he says simply. I nod, opening the door wider. "Your family, you're always welcome." And as everyone comes in, as the children scream with excitement to see their grandparents, as Isabella warmly greets Patricia, as the aroma of lasagna fills the house. I realize that this is the real victory, not over Diego, not over Camila, not over the past, but over resentment, over hatred, over the impulse to let pain define you. This is divine justice. Choosing true love over perfect revenge. Choosing healing over resentment. Choosing to build over destroying. And as I close the door after the last person enters, looking at this imperfect but genuine family that finally learned to value what really matters, I know with absolute certainty that I won. Not because someone lost, but because we all finally learned to win together. What do you think of this story? Have you ever had to rebuild family relationships after a betrayal? Do you think forgiveness is always possible when people show genuine change? I'd love to read your experiences in the comments.